So in our DOM2 folder, what's gonna be the very first folder जिसमें if we deploy our project, that any like runtime is gonna visit that folder file. Which file do we need to have? Index.html, right? So index.html is a must, right? This is gonna be the same case for DOM. अभी के लिए we are writing everything in HTML, JSON, CSS. बाद में frameworks भी सीखोगे ना, then also still you will find कि you have a file which is called index.html. ठीक है? So in this index.html, let's quickly create this, and we learned about our style tag and we learned about our script tag. Right. But अगर हम सारे code, if we go and code everything, every HTML in here, every script in here, and every style in here, will this document look viable or at least scalable? No. We faced this same issue initially also. तो हमने क्या किया था? We basically created different files for our CSS and JavaScript. No, at least for CSS we have created till. Right. So, I mean, you might have heard a terminology which is used for these things. It's called separation of concerns, right? Separation of concerns. क्या मतलब बनता है? What does these three words mean? Separation of concerns. So basically, whatever is concerning, just say, let's say we have a HTML document in front of us, right? So it should be separate. If you have a JS document, it should be separate. And if you have a CSS document, it should be separate. Okay? अभी के लिए we're gonna do most of our functions and all in the same JS file itself. But आगे चल के when we are gonna create bigger, more scalable projects, तब क्या होता है? Even functions are gonna have their separate box. Right? Functions के भी अपने separate files होंगे. Right? For now, we don't have to think about that, but we do need to separate our HTML file and CSS and all. So how do we separate CSS? Do we have something that is called link tag? Link tag, right? Right? How do we link in HTML? Link कैसे करते हैं? href and rel. So what's the relation? Style sheet. All right. So we'll go with style sheet. And what's the href? We haven't created any, right? So let's create an index.css file, right? And we're gonna hook that up in here. So index.css, right? Same way, if you want to hook a script in this HTML, what you will do is, all you have to do is go visit this script tag and यहाँ पे लिख दो src. Right, that's pretty much it. Is src में we'll have to import, let me create an index.js file, and we'll have to get that JS file in here. So index.js. Right, now if I go live and let's wait. Is the live page visible, guys? Live page visible hai kya? Live page? No, right. It should be, but take it. All right. I hope it's visible now. Right, take it. So let's get back and let's quickly give few things in here. So let's give a heading, and this will be DOM2. And यहाँ पे in script, let's write console.log. Right. Let's go back and where do we check the console? Inspect, right? And we have to check the console which says help. Clear? Sir, can we put script tag anywhere in HTML document? No, you can't. There is this bit thing where you can pick this script tag and put it inside body. But for now, I won't recommend. You should put your script tag for now, at least outside of HTML. Why? Because you want your structure to load first, then the functionality should load. right? There's a whole lot of thing going in here. For now, this thing, we have to keep it synchronous. Agar we keep the script above HTML, what it's gonna do is it's gonna load the JS first and then structure, right? Not something that we want, right? Right. Check. All right. So we have added our CSS and index here. What have we done so far? Let's say I have an input tag, right? And this input tag has some ID. Let's say input, right? Input box. Let's call it input box. And let's say if I want to access this input box, what should I do? Just access it. How can I do that? Okay. Okay. So have we learned various methods of accessing some stuff, right? So this is an ID. Can I go for a document dot get element by ID and just put that ID in here? Will this work? Will this work? Right? Right? Okay. What do you guys think about this? Document dot get elements by class name, and then will it work? Will it work? No, because that's gonna work for only class name, right? Here itself tell me this thing is gonna get a single output, right? It's gonna get whatever element we have asked, right? So one element, right? It's gonna return us. What about this thing? The class name, get elements, right? Many. So we can say ki it's either gonna return you, let's keep it full size only, right? So it's either gonna return you, I mean, node list, or you can call it HTML collection, as we have seen. Right? Right? Same thing goes for tag also. So if I do document dot get element by tag, get elements by tag name, right? If I write a div tag, it's gonna pick all the possible div in the in my HTML document. Right? Right? So again, this thing is exactly similar to this one. What else have you learned? So let's say if I do document dot query selector, and inside that I put input input box. Is it gonna access this ID input box? No. Why? Because we have to mention what's the type of this thing, right? So it's an ID, right? So it's gonna access that input box. Is it gonna give me a single element or in form of a node list या फिर HTML collection? Single element, right? So this thing is gonna again return me single element. वहीं पे if I went and did query selector all, right? And still I have written input box only in here, right? Should I be getting a single element or a node list with single element inside it? Right? Right? So we should be getting a node list of length 1. Clear? इतना clear था सबको? Everyone? Right? So what do you think? What according to you is more easy to use for now, given that we only have one input and we have a ID? Either get element by ID or query selector, more easier, right? So let's go with query selector for now. I'm picking this query selector and I'm storing it in a variable, right? So let input equals to document. Now, how can I access the value inside this input? Let's say I'm putting some input in here. How can I access that? Inner text and all, right? Right. But I need to create an event so that whenever we put some input inside this input box, I'm able to do something with it. Right? Right? Remember event याद है? Right? So we were adding, let's say I'm adding a button, right? I'm adding a button, and this is basically submit data, right? And in here, let's say I'm keeping on click, right? On click. And this thing is basically gonna run a function which is called handle click, right? So am I gonna call a function which is called handle click in this file? Right, so let's create that function handle click, and in here, if I go and do console.log input, should I be getting this input tag, this entire input tag in my console? No, why? Why? Are we calling this function? We're not, right? So let's quickly call this function too. Now, should we be printing the entire input tag? Just the input tag, nothing much, right? So let's go and try to print it. So if I click on something and if I click submit data, am I getting this input box, this entire input box, right? What if I want the value inside that input box? Value inside that input box, I'll do dot value, right? So if I go and let's say I'm storing let value equals to input dot value. And if I write input in here, value, I'll go and I'll try to write something and I'm submitting it, right? So am I getting the value from that input box? Right? Right? Taken. So let's say if I have typed 1 in this input box, I want color of this DOM to go red. Can I do that? Yes. Okay. Okay. So let's say I'm writing in here if value equals to 1, I'll have to basically make the color of this H1 red. How can I do that? How can I first access that H1? By tag, right? For now, we don't have multiple H1s, so I can go with tag, right? Right. So let's go with tag for now. So let H1 equals to document dot query selector, and in here I'm just gonna write H1, right? Because it's the tag, right? And once I have accessed the H1, if I write H1 dot value, right? And if I console dot log H1, जब भी हम value put कर रहे हैं 1, should I be printing the data inside this? Right? So let's go and see what happens. Let's say I'm writing 1 in, right? And I'm submitting. What am I getting? Undefined, right? Why am I getting undefined? Because this thing is inside tag. It's not any value. In input box, we are supposed to give some value, right? So rather than doing dot value, what should I do? Inner text, right? So let's say I'm doing let inner equals to h1 dot inner text. And if I let me keep it in here. If I print our inner, what should I get? Let's say I'm writing 1. If I submit it, I'm getting that down to getting it, right? And now, as I'm accessing this inner text, can I change the color of this thing? Right? All I have to do is I have to pick h1 dot inner text, and then what's the key for changing styles and all? Dot style. So what I'll do is I'll basically pick dot style, and I mean I can go with is this only. I'll pick style and dot color, and that color is gonna be red. Right? So if I go back and if I type 1 in this and if I submit it, my DOM2's color is going red. Clear, everyone? Everyone? So that was a quick recap of how we were accessing data and basically updating data. Right? Any doubts till now? Any doubts till now? Because now we're gonna learn how can we create new data. अपनी तरफ से how can we add more data? No? ठीक है. If no doubts, no. So let's do one thing. Let's try to understand one new topic. Then we'll start like creating data. ठीक है. So as I told you guys, कि we should have like a separation of concerns. Do you guys think it's a good idea to still keep a JS code inside HTML file? We have a JS code inside this HTML file. Do you guys think if we are doing separation of concerns or maybe separation of files, it's good that we keep JS code in HTML? एक जगह ले आए सब कुछ. Let's control everything from our JS file only. जितना भी JS है, right? So what you have to do is you have to basically remove this and let's give this button an ID, right? So let's give it ID container के अंदर का जो भी button, right? And let's quickly access that button. So इसके पहले ही access करेंगे function के. So let's do one thing. यहाँ पे let button equals to document dot get element by ID. Let's try to use everything. And what was the ID? It was basically container के अंदर का button. Right? So I'm accessing this button. What we have to do is we have to basically add a event from our side. Right? Now that we have removed the event from button, should we add event from our side in JS? So the method to add an event in JS is basically called add event listener. Right? So we want to basically add a code inside our button which listens to event. Right? And this method takes two things. Pehla cheez, what's the event, right? So it can be either click, it can be let's say change, right? It can be submit and all. For now, let's go with click, right? Because we're gonna click that button. And uske baad, the second parameter is gonna be the function that you want to run. Which function are we running? Handle click. Right? And let me close this one real quick. Okay, so by doing this, we are adding event to our button, right? Let's remove it from the variable so that this piece of code runs from top to bottom way. Okay, and we are adding this event to it. Now we have called the function or not? We have written the name of that function, but have we called it? Why don't we use on? Because on is basically syntax for whenever we are writing in HTML itself, right? So we have to tell HTML that we are trying to write some JS का event. So those event has a syntax which follows on और उसके बाद that event. ठीक है? For now we are writing it in JS. So JS already knows कि if something gets clicked, उसका मतलब we are pressing on. ठीक है? चलो. So we are not calling this function and this is going to be case. We should not be calling this function. Let me show you why. Okay. So for that, let me comment things in this and let me just simply console.log help, right? For now, if I go back and if I click on this submit data button, am I gonna run this function handle click? Right? Just trust me कि मैंने ये किया ना add event listener. So I'm basically adding an event to this और click करने पे this event is gonna happen. Just trust me कि ये होगा. ठीक है? Now by that logic, should this function run? We haven't called it. No? Okay. So should we call it? Right? So we're calling it, right? Let's go back and let's refresh and let's see. So can you guys see कि it's already printing hello without even clicking that button? Without even clicking that button, it's printing hello already. Okay, so what happens is this function is getting the above function is getting immediately invoked. कहने का मतलब we have already written this thing inside that function. So ये function is getting called as soon as we are reaching this line, right? And technically this is the very first line in JS code, right? JS code runs from top to bottom. यहाँ पे आते ही it's calling this function, right? So what's the way of writing it? Either you write it without calling it. If I go back and if I click on submit data, if I click on submit data, I'm getting that hello. If I click on it, I'm gonna get that hello, right? So either you go for that or you do something which is called wrapping a function. Okay, and this function wrapping thing is gonna come a lot, right? So function wrapping, how does it happens? We just wrap an invoked function inside an anonymous function, right? Pehle, let me tell you guys few more things. Let's say when you're clicking on this button, you want to pass something inside this function. आप कुछ argument pass करना चाहते हो, right? So if you want to do something like this, you will need to call this function. Function को तो call करना पड़ेगा if we have to pass argument, right? Then we need some fix for this thing, right? ताकि that function does not get immediately invoked, right? The fix is that we wrap it inside an asynchronous your anonymous function, right? So let me get this function and I'm gonna put it. Okay. Now let's say I'm getting that number also and I'm printing hello, comma, this number. So if I go and if I click on submit data, I'm gonna get hello and 1, 2, 3. Right? So is it clear ki first thing first, how can we add event from JS itself in some element? Take then that add event listener is gonna have 2 arguments, right? First thing is gonna be पहला चीज क्या होगा? First thing event, correct? First thing is event, and what's the second thing? It's gonna be the function that needs to be invoked, right? Or correct callback, जिसको call करना, ठीक है? And let's say you want to pass arguments inside this function. So what you will do? You'll basically wrap that function. ठीक है? इस चीज को कहते हैं wrapping a function. Are we not wrapping this function? Function को अच्छे से एक anonymous function के अंदर डाल रहे हैं, right? So this is the way. ठीक है? Now this thing is all enough. Let's go for creating and understanding everything, right? So will it be fine if I just copy this and keep it like, ठीक है, चलो, we'll start from line number 30. That's fine. ठीक है. So let's say what I want now is whenever I write this input now and I'm clicking on this button, I should basically add a data in here. What I mean by that, let's say I'm taking input in here, right? And I have a button in here. And when this button is pressed, no, I should be creating one div here, जिसमें I should be stating all the paragraphs जो भी हम input ले रहे हैं, right? Does it seem something that we can do in a website? We're gonna take an input in that website and we want to show that in our website, right? Right? Okay. So basically we'll need to create data on this DOM, right? So let's try to understand how can we create data in DOM. Okay. So let's say I'm creating an empty div here, right? And let's call this div class and let's call this container, right? मैं इस div को I'm calling it container, right? So if I go back and in index.js, I'm basically trying to access that container, right? So how can I do it? Document dot query selector, and inside this I'll be passing my class name, right? So what is it? Container, right? So I'm gonna write that container. Am I gonna get my container now? Am I gonna get my container now? Take. And now what I want to do is whenever I'm clicking on this button, no, so let me create that thing. We have already created it. Let me just copy it. So we have this also in place. So basically, if we are gonna click on that button, we're gonna run a function which is called handle click. So let's create that function. Right. And whenever this happens, na, I basically want to create some paragraphs in here. Right. So let's create that. All we have to do is we have to write let p equals to document dot create element. Right. This is the syntax for creating element. Isn't it too obvious? Right. Right. Add event listener map ki tarah hai? No. Yes, in a context, it is a method, right? And it's gonna take methods as argument. So you can say ki this is like a type of higher order function, but map ki tarah nahi hai. It basically adds event to your element, right? So initially what we were doing is we were writing on click on this button in HTML page, right? But we want to segregate our JS from HTML entirely. तो हमने क्या किया? We came in here and we added that event by writing add event listener. इसके अंदर we pass a parameter which says event and the second one is function that you want to invoke. I hope that's clear. ठीक है? So now we have to basically create an element and the syntax is basically this is again a method. We have to pass what type of element you want to create. Right? So let's say I want to create a p tag. Now this is going to create a p tag inside our DOM tree, right? So if I write p dot inner text equals to, and let's say I'm just passing hello, I am creating in DOM now, right? So what am I doing? I'm creating a p tag. Let's say I'm basically creating a p tag, empty p tag in this line. And by writing p dot inner text, I'm basically adding this inside this. Yes, no, anything? Am I doing just that? Am I at least trying to do at least that? Everyone? Everyone? And you'll have to take my word that this is gonna create. ठीक है? अभी दिखाऊंगा अभी, but just try to understand. Right? So let's go and see. Let's go and see if we are clicking, are we adding this or not? So if we go and if we click on it, is anything happening? I'm clicking on it. No. So first let's check if this function is running or not. So let's say I'm clicking in here and I'm writing clicked. So if I click on it, the function is running fine. Right? So the issue here is that although we are creating this element, are we giving it any reference कि हमें ये HTML में कहाँ add करना है? Are we telling it? No, right? We have just created this HTML. Where do we want it? Have we told it? No. So if I go and visit my DOM tree, you'll see कि in our body tag, we still have h1 input button and this div is empty. Right? So what I'll do is I'll basically access this div, which I have done by writing container. And what I'll do is I'll basically write container dot append and uske andar I'll pass this p. What does append mean, people? Append का मतलब क्या होता है? Do we know the meaning of append? Merge, okay. Okay, to add, ठीक है, ठीक है. So basically either to add, to merge or to paste, anything works. ठीक है, basically what we are doing is we are taking this container which was already in our HTML and we are basically appending our P inside that. So let's go back and if I refresh it and if I click on submit data, am I creating a P paragraph now? Right? And are we adding it in our DOM tree? Right? Can we do push? Not exactly. No. Right? I can understand why you said push. Maybe because I hope ki jo thinking thi behind that we have node list, so we can maybe push in that. Right? So no, we have a method for that which is append. ठीक है, all right. So if I keep on clicking on it, am I keeping on adding these p tags? Right, right. So let's say I want to put some input in here, and if I submit it, no, I should be getting that input rather than this p. Do you guys think that can happen? Karan, थोड़ी देर में बताता हूँ, right? But ask me this question again if I forget. ठीक है, but I'll tell you guys this thing shortly. ठीक है, wouldn't that be great कि हम जो अपना custom input डालें and if I click on submit, I should be able to get that input, right? So quickly tell me, how can I access the input box का value? Everyone, quickly. How can I access that input box's value? Okay, input box dot value, right? So first I should be accessing that input box, this input box I'm talking about, this thing, right? So I should be basically first accessing this input box. How can I do that? Let input equals to document dot get element by ID. Let's do ID once and input box, right? And if I write dot value, should I be getting the value if I console input? Everyone, are we in the same page? Yes, no, anything? Right, right. So let's say I'm gonna append, but also console.log input, right? Let's go and see. So let's say if I'm going back to console and if I writing something in it and if I clicking on submit, we're not printing it, all right. Okay, what are we missing? Document dot get element by ID and we're accessing that value. Okay, get this. In no, we don't need to append input for now. I mean, I'm just accessing this variable. That's all I'm doing. Achha, might be the issue key. I'm adding event first, then accessing the variable. Let me go back. Oh, wait. I'm accessing that element by ID with our input box. Okay, that's correct. Dot value. Value inside console. Okay. Instance का issue होगा then ठीक है, not an issue. Let's store the input value inside our function itself. So let value equals to input dot value. All right. So the issue, let me tell you guys what the issue was happening. क्या हो क्या रहा था? If I do this right, यहाँ पे if I'm writing dot value, right, and let me just comment this one out. So when the browser loads, this entire thing loads, right, from HTML ka one line to this, and then it loads this script, right? Script load hua, so this piece of code runs and it goes from line 1 to like top to bottom, right? So it basically accesses everything, it gets the value of everything and it comes here, right? If we give the value in here, if we write dot value in here, so are we not accessing the value of this input when it's empty? Right? उसके बाद when we are clicking on that button, we are basically just running this piece of code. ये function run कर रहे हैं. That's all. Right? So are we resetting that value again? No, right? We are not getting or accessing the current value. So वो थोड़ा और समझाने के लिए, let's say if I write console.log after function, right? Function. So basically I've written a console which is written after this function, right? So what happens is according to the DOM, once this HTML loads, it's gonna load this index.js file. Okay. So before this function, it's not gonna run because we have covered it inside this. So it's gonna run line by line from line number 32 to line number 50, and it's gonna like print console.log after function, right? So if I go and refresh my page, it's printing after function initially itself. Okay, so by this, you guys know that the code has already ran. All we have to do is whenever we are adding an event, no, or clicking on an event, we are gonna just call this function. Take, so just try to troubleshoot ki kya issue ho raha hai if you face something like this, because resetting might be an issue. So let's get back in here and let's write dot value name and let's access the value. Was it clear ki why I was getting an error, people? Clear है सबको? Or is there anyone who thinks कि थोड़ा issue था उधर? Abhijit, is it clear or not? Yes, no. Okay, okay. ठीक है. So let's try to understand it once again. I have written dot value here. तो इतना clear होगा कि this writing dot value is gonna access the value from this input box. इतना clear है? Dot value से क्या होता है? We are accessing the value from input box. अभी क्या होता है? Once we run it, right? हमारा application जब run करता है, it loads this entire page. Loads का मतलब it's gonna show everything which is written in HTML on our web page, right? उसके बाद it's gonna run this script file, and in this script file, it's gonna start from line number 32 because उसके ऊपर का I have commented every line, so it's gonna start from line number 32. First thing first, it's gonna add a variable to JavaScript का hoist कि we have a variable which has a value of this dot contain. Then in line number second, what it does is it again creates a variable input, और इस input को it gives the value of this thing. Right? Yes, Harshit, sort of. ठीक. So what's the current value? अभी हमने कुछ भी नहीं लिखा है. We haven't written anything in this input. So what's the current value of this input? Empty string. Value of that input. Yes, no, anything, people, come on. Right? It's empty. Right? So we are just putting empty string in here. अभी हमने input को we have given the value of empty string. Now we are running this piece of code. It basically attaches event to our button, and then we are basically have this function, right? This function is not getting invoked, right? Right, because we haven't clicked on button. So this is what happening जब file load हो रहा है. Now, if I try to access this input without updating it, input, what's the value of this input? It's still empty, right? तो हमें क्या करना है? We have to access the latest value. Latest value कैसे access होगा? Whenever we are running that function, no? जब भी run कर रहे हैं, we try to access the latest value. ठीक है? तो by doing this, you should be able to access the latest value. Clear, everyone? Right? ठीक है. So now let's say I'm printing value in here, and now if I write something in it and उसके बाद I'm clicking on submit data, what's happening is जब ये function run कर रहा है, it again accesses this input जो कि it's just accessing that element and it's getting the current value from that input, and that current value is something, right? ठीक है. So we have stored that value inside this variable called value. What do you guys think if I replace this string with this value variable? Should I not get the value that I'm currently writing in that input? Inner text के अंदर. Right? ठीक है, एक बार लिख के देखते हैं. Let's say rather than doing this, I'm writing value. Alright. So if I go in here and if I write something in it, submit it, am I getting the current value जो भी हमने लिखा है? Right? Right? So if I go in here and write hello, it's gonna write that hello. ठीक है? And if you keep on adding, it's gonna keep on adding whatever is written in this input. All right. Yes. And also, if like this is the basic concept of creating your login phase, right? So let's say if you want a value in here and आप क्या लिख रहे हो, if the value is equals to password 123, then only you're gonna run this entire function. ठीक है? Else what you will do is you will basically alert user password is wrong. Remember alert क्या करता था? It creates the dialog box pop up, right? So now we are accessing the current value and we are checking if that current value is equals to password 123. अगर नहीं तो we are gonna get an alert. Let's try to write it. Let's say if I'm writing password 321 and if I submit it, I'm gonna get an alert which says password is wrong. And if I go and type the correct password 123 and submit it, I'm gonna get that password printed. Clear the logic behind password ka login sign up, right? So this is login, right? What happens in sign up is we store the data. Store data कैसे करते हैं वो थोड़ी देर में सिखाऊंगा. Right? We are gonna create an application which will be called to-do application. To-do पता है? What's to-do? ठीक है कोई नहीं बताऊंगा मैं थोड़ी देर में बताता हूँ बस क्विकली बताओ in assignment no we'll be discussing it in the next half of our lecture. इतना बताओ is this stuff clear everyone? Whatever we have discussed so far, we have learned how can we create elements in our JS. Is that clear to everyone? किसी को भी कोई doubts? No? ठीक है, so let's do one thing. Let's have a early break 10 मिनट पहले ही and then we'll sit and create a to-do application end to end. ठीक है, sounds cool? All right, so go have a break. Have a break of 4 minutes only and फिर हम let's start to create. ठीक है, so yeah, get back at 54 everyone. No, I was just creating these files. इसमें files create कर रहा था. तो recording देख लो मुल्केश. Weekend पे बैठो and go for recording. ठीक है. हाँ, multiple issues are falling at same times. तो थोड़ा divide करना पड़ेगा ना. ठीक है. 54 हो गया. Is everyone back? Right. ठीक है. So let me just quickly fix this. ठीक है. So again, I've created that basic setup because we are gonna create a to-do application. ठीक है. So before creating this to-do application, let's try to do a bit pre-production, right? So application बनाने से पहले there is usually a discussion तो application दिखने कैसे वाला है and what components is it gonna have. ठीक है. So let's say this is our web page, right? And I'm creating an input box in here जिसमें we have input box, right? Which is basically gonna hold the to do, जो भी नाम है to do का. What else can we have in a to do application? People, to do application में और क्या हो सकता है? First ये बताओ, to do clear है application कौन सा होता है? Right? It's basically what can I say? Work tracker. So let's say you want to do 3 things today, right? Reading and singing and all. So create those to do's, right? करने का to do. Take. So what should we have? We have title, right? So I'm going to store it in our input. We're going to access that title from input. What else can we keep? Add button. Okay. Description. All right. Date. Okay. Okay. We don't need email password. Let's say if I'm creating basic input, so should I be able to, let's say, check the priority? कि if this task is high, medium, or maybe low priority, पहले करना है बाद में करना है. Right, right. And should we have a status if this to do is complete or not? Complete या फिर not complete, right? And of course we should be having a button to add the to do, right? First let's go for these 4 data points. ठीक. Reminder section, I mean the list is gonna go on and on. ठीक है, वो आप लोग धीरे धीरे बनाते रहना. अभी के लिए let me just teach you guys basic stuff. ठीक. So these 4 stuffs are pretty basic. We should at least have these in an input to do. ठीक. And what do you guys think should happen once we click on this button, add to do button पे? We should show this to do, right? So let's say I'm creating a div in here and यहाँ पे I'm showing that to do, right? Rather than going for list, let's go for more accurate approach and let's go for a table. एक table बनाते हैं, right? So that table is gonna hold serial number, then it's gonna hold our to do, then it's gonna hold its priority, then it's gonna hold its status, right? Right? Sounds fine. Take. Should we start creating this stuff? Right? Chalo, quickly tell me, if I'm gonna create an input box, right? If I'm gonna create an input box, do we all know how can I access this input ka value? Right? And do we all know how can I show that input ka value? Right? Okay. So let's go and quickly create this input setup. Right? So let me create this div. I'm gonna call it ID. Let's go with container, and inside this, what I'm gonna have is I'm gonna have an input box, right? and this thing is gonna have a type of text, and let's keep a placeholder. Everyone remember placeholder? क्या करता है placeholder? Shows what do we need to put inside this input box. So your tasks name here, let's keep that, and let's give it an ID also. So let's say container के अंदर का input, right? And then we have a priority order, right? We have to have a priority order in our input, in our to do, right? So how can I give 3 different options of priority order: high, medium, and low? Is there any tag which can give me like drop down or something? Select tag, right? Okay, so let's add a select tag. I think we already discussed about select tag, right, in last lecture. Okay, good. So you guys are gonna remember that. So let's say if I'm keeping priority in here, and यहाँ पे let me write option. This is gonna be your high, and this option is gonna be medium, and this option is gonna be right. We should be giving these options some value, ताकि when we do target element dot value, we should be getting that value, right? So let's give it a value of high, and let's give this one a value of medium, and let's keep it capital itself. यहाँ पे let's give it a value of lower. ठीक. So you see, इसके लिए we'll be creating multiple inputs and multiple select tags, but they are all alone. ठीक. Rather than doing this, have we learned a tag which can have everything inside it? These multiple inputs inside it. Have we discussed form tag yet or ever? Yes, right? Okay. So if you guys don't remember it, when we have these type of multiple inputs, right? Be it sign up, login, or multiple inputs, we go for something that is called form, right? It's more better approach of like creating multiple inputs in. So let's say I'm picking this thing and I'm keeping this inside this form, right? Let me name this form. I'm gonna name it container के अंदर का form, and the naming convention is gonna change a bit. So it's container form के अंदर का input, right? Same thing goes for this. So I'm gonna keep this container के अंदर के form के अंदर का select, right? So we have a select tag and we need a button, right? So let's have this button and submit, or basically let's go for add to, right? And what would be the type of this button? If you guys remember, form के button का type क्या होता है when we have to submit it, right? So the type is gonna be submit. All right. Okay, so this is your form tag. Okay, if you haven't learned it yet, this is a form tag, right? And it's way more better approach than writing single different inputs. It contains it inside it, right? So there is this there is this difference between semantics, right? So we have semantic and non-semantic stuff. Take, so if you go for non-semantic, you have your div, span, and all, right? So these are boxes, but we don't know why do we need these boxes, right? We can use them anywhere. Whereas there are some semantic tags like navbar, not navbar, let's say like heading, header, and we have sections and all. So these are semantic. When we write them, we know what we are putting inside it. Okay. उसी तरीके से we have one form. We know कि if we are writing something inside that form, that thing needs to get submitted. All right. So basically giving it a meaning. Yes, to get an idea. All right. Div and section के बीच में there is no such difference. दोनों काम एक ही करेंगे. They're gonna be the boxes which are gonna hold stuff. But like if you write something as section, right? So you're basically giving a brief कि ये एक section है in that website. So basically gives a meaning to the stuff inside it, right? If I'm writing something inside header, you guys will know कि that thing is for heading, right? So basically just to give a meaning to that. Okay, so we have this form. Let's go and check it out. So we'll have to run it on our local storage. The storage name live server, right? So we have this thing, right? Let's give it a bit CSS. So let's go and quickly manage this CSS. We have our container, right? So let's give this thing a width of 60% and a border of 1 pixel solid black, right? Go back. So we have given it a width of 60%. How can I center this div? How can I center this div in this web page? Entire div को कैसे center करूँगा? Margin auto, right? So given that I've written a width in it, we all know we can just simply go for margin, right? That thing is gonna center my div. Yes. Now I want these things in single line, right? Exactly how we discussed in our pre-production. So हमें input इस line इस row में चाहिए priority and then status should be there and then the button. Is there any way of achieving that? Is there any display property maybe that we know about? Display flex and flex direction column sounds right. Sounds about right. So let's go for that. Let's write display and let's go for flex, but it won't work. Why? Display flex works on child, parent, grandparent, which one? Parent, right? Parent पे काम करता है. So what's the parent of these things? What's the immediate parent? Form, right? तो हमें जाके form को करना पड़ेगा fix. So I'm gonna just access that form container के अंदर का जो भी form, and I'm gonna give it a display of flex, and let's go for flex direction column, right? Back again, and we have in this fashion, right? So let's fix this also a bit. So क्या करते हैं? Let's access this container का form, and inside that, let's say if I want to select multiple things at once, मुझे input भी select करना है, मुझे select tag भी select करना है, मुझे button भी select करना है. What's the combinator for that? Can I write input comma select comma button? Will this work? Will this work? Okay. So although it will look, I guess, a bit off, but let's go for it. Let's keep it 50%, right? Let's go, and we have this. Okay. Now, how can I center this? Given that half of these items like input and button are your what were in input and button? Inline थे कि block थे? Input and button both. Block. एक और बात है. Was it inline or block? Inline, right? Inline था. And can we give margin auto to inline? No, right? So we won't be able to give it, but either we can go for text align center. Remember, I gave you guys a cheat, right? ठीक है. Let's not go for that. Let's go for flex की property. What was the flex's property जो कि चीजों को center में करती थी? Given that we are using column now. ठीक है. So should justify content work here or should align items work here? Remember, I spent like half an hour or maybe 40 minutes for explaining you guys axis, main axis, cross axis, right? Justify content is for main axis. Column hai, तो main axis is gonna be this vertical stuff, right? Rather than going for vertical, let's go for horizontal. So vertical भी रहने देते हैं. If it gets bigger, I can just keep it. But let's go with align item center, right? Have we aligned our items in center? Right? Okay, so let's fix these items quick. Let me give them some padding. So padding top to bottom, let's give them 5%, and left to right, let's give them 10, and let's give them margin margin top. Let's give them margin top, and let's go for 15 pixel. Right? Okay. So seems fine. We might need to give some. How can I give like this outer block some space so that we have space between the border. What I'm saying is we should have a space between this border and this button. How can I do that? Border and that button. So both are gonna work. So let's go for padding itself, but padding I should be giving it in parent, right? So if I'm giving padding and let's say 20 pixel, this should work. Creates space. Okay, let's add few colors also. If we are at it, so form is there. Let's give this container. I'm not sure if I taught you guys or not, but you can go for background color, and iske andar if you do no linear gradient, not background color, that should be with background image. And if you do linear gradient, in this linear gradient na, you can pass two different colors. So let's say I'm writing blue and I'm writing orange, right? So it's gonna give it a texture which is the right? So it's gonna have blue and then it's gonna have a soft orange. Take, although this combination is not looking nice. I'm not very great with colors, so you guys can suggest something. I think aqua should work here. It's a bit lighter in tone. Tick, seems fine. Tick, and how can I add some radius in this box? It's looking too sharp. Border radius. Tick, huh? So let's go and add border radius to it. So border radius and let's go with 10 pixel. Okay, back to it. Okay. Now let's say if I'm clicking on this thing, it's getting this type of focus. Again, not looking nice. Shall we fix the focus? Although it's not CSS class, but I really want to cover these few topics. So if I'm clicking on this, I'm getting this, right? Can we fix this focus? So what I can do is I can access that container form and uske andar ka input, and in that let's add focus, right? So whenever I'm focusing on it, I want the outline to be none. Okay, outline none, but I want some box shadow, right? Border none karne pe, I mean that focus thing is not gonna go. Uske liye, let me just comment this one out. If I do border none, no, border none, if I go back and if I click on it, this outline is still gonna be there. इसके लिए हमें क्या करना पड़ेगा? We'll have to go for outline none. Right? So if I go now, you'll see that the outline is not there anymore. अभी मैं क्या करूँगा? I'm gonna add some box shadow to it. Box shadow. And what did box shadow do? People remember क्या करता था वो? Remember. आप ही लोग बताओगे. बताओ क्या करता था? परछाई, ठीक है? So it used to add something outside of this box. Do we know how can we add inside of that box? Box के अंदर कैसे ले आए? Yes? Okay. ठीक है. तो seems like you were exploring things when you were doing your projects, right? ठीक है. If you don't, then you have to basically write inset. Right? तो basically it's 2 syllables in के अंदर set करो. Clear है? समझ आता है मकसद? So we have to basically do this inside our input. ठीक है? So let's go back and I don't want any like height or width to it. So I'm just gonna go with your spread radius and blur. So let's keep it 2 pixels and let's keep it orange. Right? So I'm keeping the radius for 2 pixel and this thing basically kitna hame strong chahiye. So let's keep it there. Now if I focus on it, it's getting this. Fine, although the color change not quite good. Okay, never mind. Again, I told you guys I'm not good with colors. Okay, so this seems fine. That's okay. Take, and when we do that, let's give this thing a padding also. So let's give the padding of 5 pixel. And if I go and if I click on it, take, that seems fine. Right, okay. And let's say if I want to add that type of effect in my button also, how can I do that? Button pe. What was the pseudo class for it? बटन के लिए, जैसे इनपुट के लिए we have focus. What was for button? Hover. Okay, ठीक है. So hover is basically it's gonna work when we're gonna hover over that button, right? So if I add hover, it's gonna show effect. Let's say I'm gonna add fog shadow, and again let's keep everything 0. बाहर वाले का let's increase the radius and let's keep it 2 pixel, and इसको let's let's go for it. No, not aqua. Let's go for it. Okay. So if I just hover over it now, I'm gonna get this, right? What I want to do is whenever I'm clicking on that button, that effect should take place. Correct. Active, right? So what we have to do is we have to go for active one. Take now what's gonna happen whenever I'm clicking on this button, even though I'm hovering over it, whenever I'm clicking on this button, that effect is gonna take place. Take, and I mean we can like increase the timing of this effect if you go for transition and all. So काम करते हैं. ठीक है, that's fine, that's fine. Just एक बार check कर लेना what transition does. ठीक है, so we are creating a effect in here जो कि 1 millisecond में time ले रहा है, right? So you can go and increase that transition. So let's say कि if you are picking this button and इसके अंदर we went and we make the transition to be like 0.4 milliseconds, right? तो अभी that effect is gonna like stay a bit more. ठीक है, bit more. Right? Enough CSS for today. Take all. Okay, well, if we get our time, I will teach you a few more things. But abhi ke liye itna काफी है. Now, what we have to do is whenever I'm clicking on this button, I should be accessing input ka data and the priority that I have selected. Yes. So shall we go and add stuff in our JS? JS में add करें. So what's the form? It's basically container form. So let's access that form and let's add document dot query selector, and let's access that form. So container inside जो भी form है, I'm gonna get that and I'm gonna add event listener to it, right? So form has a property of getting submitted, right? And yes, I missed the ID. ठीक, तो जिस तरीके से button has a property of getting clicked, no, forms have property of getting submitted. So I'm gonna write submit in here and I'm gonna run a function which is called handle form submit, right? I'm going to call this function and let me just go and quickly create this function. Handle form submit this, and let's say console.log submitting. Take all time you submit in form? Yes. Yes. ठीक है, and form is an industry standard. Whenever you want to take multiple type of inputs, एक छोड़ के you have multiple, you will go with form only. ठीक है, it's industry standard. ठीक है people, समझ आता है, सेंस बनाता है और not? ठीक, so now you don't have to go and write an on click in here. That form is gonna get submitted once you are clicking on this. एक काम करते हैं, let's open and by the logic that we have learned till now, if I'm gonna submit this form or rather click on this button, should I be printing that console? Whatever we have written in handle form submit. Yes, no, anything people, right? So let's click on it. कुछ दिखा क्या यहाँ पे? ध्यान देना. If I click on this button, is something happening? No? Is it not visible here? यहाँ पे. Just check it in console whenever I'm clicking on it. Anyway, see the submit, but it's getting disappear real quick. Yes. So the form is such an important thing कि browser actually expects this semantic. तो अगर you have written a form, no, browser क्या कहता है? I'm gonna expect कि you are gonna fetch some data from database by using this form. तो browser क्या कहता है? If you are accessing a form, no, आप उसको use करोगे और data आप भेजोगे backend में. Are we doing anything like that? हमारे पास backend है ही नहीं, तो data backend में भेजेंगे कैसे? No, we can't do this, right? So how can we prevent this? Basically, I'm going to access that event, right? Event kaun sa event? Basically this submit event, right? And I'm going to get it in here and I'm going to write e.prevent default, right? What does this do? It prevents the default behavior of form of submitting and sending data to server, right? Because we don't have any server. Okay, now watch. If I go and click on it, abhi that submit is there, right? तो एक और बार quickly बताता हूँ. The form has a property of getting submitted and sending the data to your server. Once your browser sends your data to server, no, वो क्या करता है? It refreshes the page real quick. ठीक है? So that was actually happening whenever we are clicking on it, no, the data was getting sent to server, but कोई server ही नहीं था to receive it. So everything was going there, but हमारा browser it was not able to access कि हो क्या रहा है, so it was refreshing itself. तो हमने क्या किया? We just prevented that default behavior of form by writing event.prevent default. ठीक है guys, समझ आता है? Everyone? 1 0 yes no कुछ भी चलेगा मेरे को. ट्रू फॉल्स भी चलेगा. ठीक है, ठीक है, चलो समझ आया कि नहीं सबको? इफ यू डोंट अंडरस्टैंड आई विल एक्सप्लेन यू, बट यू विल हैव टू टेल मी once again. ठीक है. So we created this form, right? And why I insisted on form? Because form is industry standard. ठीक है? And if you're going for multiple inputs, you are expected to use form. ठीक. Now this form has a default property कि whenever it gets submitted, no, whenever you click on the type submit wala thing, so this thing can be input, this thing can be div. If it has the type of submit, no, it will be a button, submit button. So if that thing is getting clicked, no, browser knows कि we have a form, that form is gonna have some data and that data needs to be sent in our backend. सर्वर में भेजना है उसको. ठीक. तो वो क्या करता है? सर्वर में भेजने के बाद रिफ्रेश कर देता है. ठीक है, मान लो आपने उसको भेज दिया, आपने कोई लेटर भेजा, बट लेटर पे एड्रेस नहीं लिखा, तो वो कहीं जाने वाला है लेटर? नहीं, राइट? उसी तरीके से वी हैवंट गिवन इट एनी यूआरएल कि कौन सा यूआरएल पे हमारा सर्वर है, क्या है, कुछ भी नहीं दिया डेटा. ठीक. तो वो क्या करेगा? इट्स गonna सेंड इट समवेयर, बट वो रिफ्रेश जरूर करेगा पेज को, एंड दैट रिफ्रेश इज बेसिकली रिमूविंग आवर डेटा अगेन एंड अगेन. सो हमने क्या किया? वी प्रिवेंटेड दैट डिफॉल्ट बिहेवियर ऑफ आवर form by writing something that is called prevent default. Again, it's very on the nose. जो काम है वही नाम है, right? Right? And this is the property that everyone has to try to gain. ठीक है? You see कि whenever I'm creating the functions, I'm naming them something जो कि वो करने वाले हैं. So if I'm creating a button, I'm writing handle click or something. ठीक है? So I'm basically submitting it. Can we write anything else as argument instead of event? You can alongside event, but event should be there. ठीक. Now shall we console this event and try to dissect कि इस event में है क्या? Right? So let's go and check it out. So if I'm clicking on this, I am getting this event. So this is basically a submitted event, right? We are more concerned with what the target shows of this event. What does it say? Target? What does target say? Target basically has the data of that form, right? So either we can go on writing target.input and all, ठीक है? तो that is a bit more tedious way. तो उसके अलावा we can do is we can just access our those two things that we have, right? So let's say I'm accessing my to do and let's say to do को क्या दिया था हमने नाम? We have named it container form input and this thing is container form select. So let's say to do को store कर रहे हैं document dot get element by id, and in this I'm storing to do to do container के अंदर का form के अंदर का end, right? And we have a select tag, so select equals to document dot get element by id, and this was container के अंदर का form के अंदर का select, right? And given that हम उसको function के अंदर ही लिख रहे हैं, तो we are gonna get that exact state. We can just go for value, right? ठीक है. And what else do we want? Do we want the status also? Right? So status was gonna be Boolean. That's why we were not giving users option to select status, right? Because if they're gonna create a task, brand new task, we know कि it's uncompleted, right? हमें पता है कि उसका status uncompleted है, तभी user वो बना रहा है, right? That's why we didn't created any field for our status. अभी क्या करेंगे? In here we have these multiple different values data of same to do. Do we know any data structure which stores data for same things? Any data structure, not element, data structure. कितने data structure पढ़े हमने? So far, how many data structures have we learned? ठीक, एक हमने पढ़ा है array और एक हमने पढ़ा है object. Right? So one we have learned array and one we have learned object. Right? Which one of these two holds the data which has same properties? All right. ठीक है, ठीक है. फ्लिपकार्ट पे जाता हूँ और दिखाता हूँ. ठीक है, मैं यहाँ पे टाइप करता हूँ मोबाइल्स, राइट? वी हैव दीज मल्टीपल लिस्ट ऑफ मोबाइल, इतने सारे डेटा है, राइट? मान लो इस मोबाइल का जो टाइटल है, जो डिस्क्रिप्शन है, जो प्राइस है, विल इट वी आर गोना स्टोर इट इन अ एरे, और आर वी गोना स्टोर इट इन एन ऑब्जेक्ट? ऑब्जेक्ट में स्टोर करेंगे, राइट? राइट. So let's say I'm creating this object with all the data of mobiles, right? With all the data of mobiles. ठीक, मोबाइल, एक मोबाइल का, राइट? फॉर दिस वन iPhone 15 मैंने आई हैव स्टोर्ड द डेटा इनसाइड दिस थिंग. बट आर वी गोना हैव जस्ट वन प्रोडक्ट और आर वी गोना हैव मल्टीपल प्रोडक्ट्स? Multiple products, right? So how can we store multiple of same objects? Should we not create an array of objects? An array of objects, right? Right, right. Make sense? Make sense? तो जेसन याद आ रहा है सबको? जेसन जो पढ़ाया था, right? So first thing first, we have a to do which is gonna be of same type. It's gonna have the name of that to do, select value of that to do, basically priority of that to do, and it's gonna have a status of that to do. Will it make sense to store all these three data inside an object or an array? An object, right? So let's create an object. Let object equals to this. Abhi objects are gonna have your key value pairs, right? So let's say if I want a key of to do and I want to store that to do variable in it, fine. Fine. So let me tell you guys a thing about object key value pairs. If the key value pairs have same name, right? I mean name का मतलब this to do is a variable which holds some value, right? It's not a string. ये कोई string नहीं है. It's not like this. It's a value. So if something like this happens, no, you can just go and write simple to do. That also works. ठीक है? And then next line में select, and then next line में we want status, and that status should be false by default. ये समझ आया? This thing, to do and select, what I did there. Everyone? If the value is variable and you want the key to have the same name as value or variable, what you can do is you can just write a single to do. This thing is going to represent exactly something like this. To do key holds a value called to do. ठीक? Yeah. Yes, Abhijit. Correct. Clear? ये clear है? ठीक? So it's a bit short form that we can use. ठीक? So now if I console.log obj, once we have filled that value, so if I, let's say if I select write, and if I select a priority and if I write add to do, am I getting the object? जो भी डेटा हमने स्टोर कराना था अपने ऑब्जेक्ट के अंदर. Everyone, can you guys see this object? We have a select as medium, we have status as false, and we have to do as right. ठीक? So we don't want it to be select, हम इसको रखते हैं priority नाम से, right? Select. ठीक है? So now if I go back and if I write some task again and if I write a priority in it, now I should be getting an object with to do का नाम, the status and priority. How am I getting this object? Is it clear, people? सबको? Everyone, any doubts till now, guys? We have just accessed all the values from our input box and we have just created a object format और कुछ नहीं किया. Is it clear, people? 1 or 0? I need all 47 of you guys to type. 56 थे, बाकी कहाँ चले गए? Guys, isn't this interesting? चलो कोई नहीं, चलेगा. ठीक है, ठीक है. So चलो ठीक है. So we have this, and let's say I want to add one more to do. So let's say to do 2, and this thing is high priority, and if I'm submitting it, we are getting it. But guys, is there a issue? Am I storing that to do somewhere जो पिछला वाला था, और am I just printing that new to do फिर से? Right? Makes sense. Why? Whenever this function is running, are we not starting this object from starting? We just learned कि अगर value we have defined it inside function, that value is gonna have the data of current state. Current state is to do 2. So initial states का value is getting lost. बाकी पिछले time whatever happened, it's all lost, right? So can we store these objects inside an array as we discussed? And can we create that array as a global variable so that it does not gets refreshed every time we run this function, right? So let's create a global array. Let array equals to in global array. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically do array dot push that certain object, right? And then I'm just going to print array. Take now, if I go and store to do 1, and if I'm gonna write medium, and if I'm gonna add to do, I'm gonna get an array. Take this one holds to do 1. Let's say if I'm fixing it and I'm adding to do 2, and this is high priority, I am getting a new array, but this still holds the initial to do ka data. Right? So we are storing the data also. ठीक, करण एक सेकेंड सारा चीज एक और बार क्विक रिविजन कराता हूँ. ठीक, so guys, is this thing clear? How can we store things in an array? I mean, we are just doing pretty much JS stuff, और वो भी easy वाले, right? ठीक है, तो एक और बार end to end अपना प्रोडक्ट समझते हैं क्या क्या किया हमने. So we basically created a form, right? That form had input box, that form had a select box, and that form had a button, right? That button has a type of submit, right? So if I'm going to click on this button, is this thing going to submit that form? Submit that form, right? And we went and added a event listener. What does event listener do? It attaches events to our selected element, जो कि form है. We have added a submit event to it, and we want to run a function which is called handle submit in it, right? We want to pass an argument. So argument pass करने के लिए we wrapped it in an anonymous function. All right. What are we passing inside this handles form submit? We are passing an event, right? Why do we need this event in here? Because what's the default behavior of form? if someone asks what's the default behavior of form, what you guys will say? Acha, you might need to write it, but tell me if I'm correct or not. The form, when it gets submit, it sends data to server, right? And then refreshes the page. Given that we don't have any server, do we need to send this data to server? Server hai nahi, then why do we need to send it? Right? So what we did was we prevented that default behavior. And if you don't use form, then submit button works. अगर आप form use नहीं करते हो, so you will have to, rather than going for type submit, because type submit is not gonna work. So you'll have to attach a event to that button, which will be click. All right. The submit is for form. Take now inside this handle form submit, what were we doing is we were basically accessing the value of our to do and our select tag, right? Basically these two things, to do to and this select tag. And inside that we give that data a shape by sending it in a data structure that is object. उस object में we wrote it as to do. I told you guys a new thing कि if that to do का key you want the same as the value name, right? And that value should not be your string. It should be like a variable. So you can just write a single key या value and it's gonna like reproduce into in this format. Take, and then we set the priority with select and we set the status as false. ठीक, उसके बाद what we did was to persist our data, to save our data, we basically pushed it inside a global array. Clear? So we are basically storing our all to-do ka data in this array. That's all we have did so far. Any doubts till now, people? Anything? Easy, eh? Easy, eh? Right? ठीक है, ठीक है. So once we have added this data, should we not show that data in our web page? Web page में दिखाना है, right? And how do we create and append things? We know that. So can we do it? Right? Let's create a table format, right? So let's say I have another div and this div has table, right? So table के अंदर we have t head, right? And let's create a t row. So in heading tag, what's the column creation wala tag to create column? Is it td or th? td or th for head के लिए, for t head, th, right? It's gonna get bold. So let's go for th. And what do we want the very first column to be? I want it to be serial number, right? So let's go for serial number, right? Then what do we want? What do we want? Let's say we want to do item, right? Then we want priority, and then we want to check the status of that thing, right? These 4 columns we want in our table. Yes. All right. And let's create a t body. T body. Let's give this t body an ID. This is basically gonna be your, so this is container. Okay. Let's give it table body ka name itself. Okay. All right. And what we are gonna do is we are gonna append our data into this t body. Take. What's the goal? Is goal clear? We have to basically access this t body and we have to append our data in this t body. But first thing first, we have an array of data. We have an array of data. How do, let's do one thing. Once we have submitted this form, no, let's call one more function from this function itself, right? And this is gonna be handle append data, right? Let's call this function. And this function, let's create this function handle append data, and इसके अंदर let's write separate code for appending data. Okay, so let's discuss for this object. Let's say you have a object, right? And this object has data which are basically name. So name, let's say to do, it has priority, let's say high, and it has not in a height, high, and it has a status which is false, right? So should I be creating different TD for this thing, for each column in our body? Okay, let me reiterate it. So let's say we have T body, right? And in that T body, we want our TR, right? And in TR, we want TD. First thing is going to be your serial number. Then second thing is going to be your name. And then third thing is going to be your priority. And then fourth thing is going to be your status. ऐसा कुछ करना है हमें, right people? So how many TD do we want for each to do? 4. So let's go and create 4 different TD. So let TD1 equals to document dot create element, and you guys tell me what should I put in here? क्या लिखूं यहाँ पे? What tag do I want to create? I want to create first TDs. So should I be writing TD in here? TD. Take, and let's create 4 of these. So let me just quickly create 4 of these. And this one. So this thing is going to be TD2, TD3, and TD4. We have created those TDs. We are going to append all these TD inside a TR. So let's say I'm creating a TR, document dot create element, and this thing is going to be TR, right? This TR is going to hold all these TDs, right? So does it make sense if we do TR dot append these TD, TD1, TD2, TD3, TD4? We can append multiple items by writing multiple arguments. That's a property. ठीक, so we have appended TR के अंदर these TDs, but are we appending that TR to our T body? No. So we'll do it shortly. First, let's discuss about this object, right? तो हमने structures तो create कर दिया for that object, but are we dealing with just one single object or do we have multiple objects? We have an array of objects, right? Array of objects. And if you guys remember, I told you guys कि I'm gonna teach you higher order functions. वो आप usually JS में use नहीं करोगे, but you're gonna use it when you're gonna deal with JSON data. Right? Is today the day? Are we accessing something which is equivalent to a JSON data? Basically an array of objects. Take. So what we have to do is we have to basically run a for each. So let's say I'm going for array dot for each, right? And inside this we have to write an anonymous function and this thing, right? यहाँ पे क्या कहता? We have element, we have index, and we have array. We just need element and index for now. Take. And do we need multiple of these things, multiple of table rows with multiple different TD? Right? So will it make sense to create these many TRs as many times as elements are there? So let's say there are 5 elements, should be creating 5 different rows, right? So we have kept it in our for each. यहाँ तक sense बनाता है everyone? If I do console.log element, what am I gonna get? Am I gonna get these separate elements? Right? So let me do one thing. Let me show you guys by consoling it once. Okay. So let me just comment this code out and let's go back and यहाँ पे let me to do 1 priority. Let's keep it high and let me add to do. Take and to do 2. This will be high and add to do. Right. So in our initial function, यहाँ पे मैं आपको show कर रहा हूँ array. And in our second function, basically this one, I'm giving you the value of this thing, right? So iterating comma element, right? Now if I go back, for now things are getting refreshed. We'll fix it shortly. Abhi ke liye. If I go, you see, we're iterating each and every element. So if I add one more to do, we are iterating twice. Enough? Everyone? So is this thing clear what we are doing with for each? Why have we written array dot for each? Everyone? Or have I lost some of you peoples? Because the like responses is nowhere near class के starting में जितना था. Everyone, guys, please let me know if you are getting it or not, or else how will I be able to help you guys? अभी तक समझ आ रहा है? ठीक है, ठीक है. So now what I'll do is I'll basically access that element, right? So if I go in here, let me just comment this out. If I do element dot, what have we named it, to do? If I do element comma element dot priority, and if I do element dot status, am I not gonna access each and every value of that object? हर एक ऑब्जेक्ट की वैल्यू ऐड करता रहूंगा. Everyone, am I gonna access these values? To do, priority, status. Let me console it and show you guys. So if I put it in here, यहाँ पे, and if I just do this, I'm gonna iterate and I'm gonna show you guys each and every data, right? So let's say मैंने कुछ भी लिख दिया यहाँ पे and I'm clicking on hi. So I'm getting each and everything, right? So I'm getting that name, I'm getting that priority, and I'm getting that status का value. ठीक? तो can we not do td1 dot inner text equals to element dot to do? td2 dot inner text equals to element dot priority, td3 dot inner text equals to element dot status. Remember यहाँ पे क्या किया था हमने? यहाँ पे we were basically getting that value, जो भी value था, and we were giving it to inner text. Can we not do that same thing here? So let's uncomment our code and let's give this thing a value. So very first td1 was gonna have value of serial number, right? Serial number. So how can I give it serial number? Any logics, anything? Guys, come on. I need your help. Right? We have index. हमारे पास index है. Can I do I plus 1? People, everyone. Count maintain करने की जरूरत ही नहीं. Right? So what I can do is I can do td1 dot inner text equals to I plus 1. Right? Then let's go for td2 dot inner text, and this is gonna be holding the name of that to do. So element dot to do. All right. ठीक है. Then td3 dot inner text. This is gonna hold the value of element dot priority. Right? So I'm gonna give it the value of priority. And final one is gonna hold the value of status, right? So td dot inner text, and this is gonna be holding the value of status, right? Again, guys, I'm just assigning those values, nothing new. Make sense, everyone? ठीक है. Value assign कर दी. I've created a tr and I'm basically appending it to tr. Let's keep creation phase here. यहीं पे एक साथ रख देते हैं. Let me just comment this console up. Right? And I'm appending every td1 से लेके td4 to my tr. So should this thing now be visible, or we are missing few more things still? कुछ miss कर रहे हैं? Here element is object or whole array? हमने array पे for each चलाया. You tell me, is element the whole array or is it object? एक specific element. ठीक है? Is it clear? किसने पूछा था? जीवन, is it clear? ठीक है? It's gonna be that separate object. All right, people with me till here? Am I missing something? I have added appending everything to tr. Do we need to append this tr somewhere, or we are good to go? हमने मेंशन किया है क्या कि वेयर डू वी नीड दिस इन आवर HTML? We wanted it in here in our T body. Have we mentioned anything like that? No, right? So we have T body, we haven't defined it, right? Okay, so let's quickly define it. Let table body equals to document dot get element by ID table body, right? All we have to do is pick that table body and उसमें append कर दो this entire tr. ठीक. Inside tr, while appending, will the inner text of td get stored? Yes, yes. A bit of nesting goes here. Let me explain you bit by bit. So when we are doing tr dot append td1 to td3, right? Let's go back in here. When I was doing this thing, right? Let p equals to document dot create p. So I was creating a p. I was giving that p the value of input value, right? And I was appending it to container. Was it retaining the value p? Was it holding the value of whatever we are writing in input? Right? That same thing is going to happen here. We are going to retain the value of whatever we have assigned the variable, right? To inner text, it has the value of i+1. This one has element dot to do. So it's going to hold that value. Take, and then what we are doing is we are basically taking that entire tr or usko we are appending it to table body. Make sense, everyone? Everyone? So shall we go and check if we are able to add or not? So to do 1 and priority high. If I'm adding it, am I adding it in my table? Right? Isn't this amazing? Take, let's say I'm adding 2 to 2 and I'm gonna add it, but we are gonna encounter an issue. Let me add 2 to 3. Have we added these many to dos? No. What's the issue here? क्या हो रहा है यहाँ पे? अच्छा, before doing this, do you guys remember that nesting wala question for strings in which we were basically we had to print these things? Let's say we had to print this, right? So this, but we were printing everything in same line. Right? So let's try to understand ki ho kya raha hai. So we have an array which has certain data, right? And we are like running a loop on that data and we are appending it to our table body, right? ठीक है. When we click on this table button, right? So let's say I'm adding to do 1. I'm giving it some priority and I'm clicking on add to do. Am I running this entire function? This entire handle submit, handle form submit. ये आता है line number 23 तक and it's gonna call handle append data. So it's calling this function also, right? And it's appending whatever it is it in array. जो भी array में है, we have just one object and it's appending that, right? But when we are adding something more, let's say to do 2, what we are basically doing is we have this array with 2 objects, but we are again appending that same thing, right? We're iterating from first element to last element again and again. So should we refresh or reset our table body sometime? Right? Let's say whenever I'm running this handle append data function, I know that I'm gonna append all the data which is in array inside our table body. So can I just clear that table body dot inner HTML equals to empty? Can I clear that table body every iteration pe and then add whatever new data that we have added? Guys, before running that code, I want to know if you guys are getting what I'm trying to achieve by doing this. सबको समझ आ रहा है? Everyone? Usual जनता भाई तुम लोग तो आंसर करो. Reset every iteration. Yes, Rahul. Very well. Correct. ठीक है. ठीक है. ठीक है, yeah, I can. So okay, nice suggestion. Actually, this is gonna give you guys a brief idea कि हो क्या रहा है. So let me just table body dot inner HTML. Let me just print it and show you guys कि हो क्या रहा है her iteration. So if I go in here and if I do to do one and if I add to do, wait, are we print? No, we're not printing it. Inner. Let me print text. Let's see. See. It's getting empty. ठीक है, ठीक है, ठीक है. Okay, my bad. Initially the table body is empty, right? Everyone? Right? So initially that table body is empty. उसके बाद we are adding this thing, right? So ठीक है, print down नहीं. Let's print it here only. So if I go and add whatever I've written here, let's say to do 2. So if I add to do, no, now what's gonna happen is this inner text is gonna print that first wala element. If I add to do, no, it's gonna print that first wala element. Then if I add to do 3, it's gonna print the later element. Basically, it's storing these data. ठीक है? In DOM tree, that entire thing is getting stored. So here and in our table body, you see these many TRs are there. So in each iteration, we have to basically reset it, refresh it. Take. So let's go and let's fix this. Now, if I go back and if I write to do 1 and add a priority to it, if I submit it, we are getting it. Let's try to add to do 2. Now क्या होगा? अब rather than going for that thing again, I'm just gonna clean everything and refill it. ठीक है? So I can go and keep on adding these to dos. It's gonna work fine. Right, guys? So we have created a to do application. We have basically accessed the element. We have got their value. We have updated the values and we created elements. समझ आया? Whatever we have done till here, including this thing, this resetting thing. Everyone, any doubts till now, guys? Please let me know, please. And if no, you can write 0 so that I'll know that there is no doubts. Okay. And now the logic that you want to write, you can go on write anything in here. How can we give CSS in JS? So you can do that by writing dot style, right? ठीक है. तो एक छोटी सी और चीज करते हैं. Let's say if the priority is let's say if the priority is high, we want the color to be red. If the priority is medium, we want the text color to be blue. And if the priority is low, we want the text color to be green. Sounds like if else condition, right? So we can go in here and I can write if element dot priority is equals to I need to check की value दे क्या रहे थे हम लोग, was it capital or small? So ठीक है, capital था. So I'm gonna check if high. So what I'll do is I'll basically access TD3. I'm gonna access the style property and I'm gonna get the color, and that color is gonna be red, right? Else if element dot priority equals to medium, I'm gonna access that style dot color and give it a value of blue. Take else we are gonna keep the like style dot color to be green. Right, so basically what we are doing is we are checking if the element property, if it's high, we are giving it a color of red, blue or green based on that. Let's go and see. So let's say if I'm adding to do 1 and I'm giving it a priority of high, if I add to do, I'm getting that high in red, right? If I want it in medium and this is to do 2, If I add to do, that thing is getting in blue, right? And if I want it in low, and this is to do 3, I can add it in that way. Right? Yes. Yes, Santosh. You can go and write margin padding there itself. Thick. How can we append data on top? Top as in top matlab above this. It will be messy. Yes, for now it will be. There are few tweaks around this. Again, not today. Baki will be telling you guys in next lecture. Take. So if you want to add something in here, Jao, you go and create like a element above it, right? Div and go and append it in this div. You're gonna get it above that. I think you want to ask ki if the page loads, can we write some things in JS? जैसे HTML, it loads like this. So can we add something from JS if the page loads itself? ऐसा कुछ पूछ रहे हो क्या? Okay, never mind. So few more things we're gonna cover in next lecture itself. Okay. So any doubts in this thing, guys? Anything? Please let me know. कोई भी doubts है? In at least the to do. Guys, 0 or 1, anything. Come on. Okay. ठीक है.